So today, this is the workshop final briefing. So what is this? This is the culmination of your year of study. Accelerated study, 18 credits a semester for 3 semesters. Actually, it was 19 the first and 17 the last, but you get the idea. You're basically doing 2 years of work in 1 calendar year. And it's been intense, and you've learned a lot. The knowledge you brought to bear and are bringing to bear on these projects are graphic evidence of how far you've come in a short period of time. Very many of the people making decisions about environmental issues in the world are scientific illiterates. And so you're going to be managing and making those decisions, and all of you have enough environmental science to be informed decision makers. And that's the design of this program, and that's what you've learned. So I think you should be proud of yourself and your accomplishments. Over the next hour or so, 2 hours, you're going to hear the results of what we do in this program instead of a master's thesis, where we do a public service for a government or nonprofit organization to make the world a better place. This is, of course, the purpose of this program, to make the world a better place. And so we're going to start by Professor Callahan's group on measuring science impact in conservation outcomes. So if the briefer is here, come forward.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vrinda Goenka, and today I will be presenting the final briefing on measuring science impact in conservation outcomes on behalf of my wonderful team. So before I begin, I would like to thank said wonderful team, and especially my managers Erica Wu and Fei He, and my faculty advisor, Professor Kathleen Callahan, for all their guidance this past semester. So, this past semester, we worked with the Nature Conservancy, which is an environmental nonprofit organization based in New York and operates out of 79 countries globally. And they have a strategic initiative called One Conservancy Science, which houses over 1,000 scientists globally to disseminate critical conservation research. So what is the problem that we are trying to solve as part of this project? Scientists are in charge of filling our knowledge gap with the right information. However, as you can see in the graph on the right in green, more and more Americans are losing faith in what scientists are saying. And this is an indicator of the weakening impact of the science community. And this is because of a lack of effective communication and impact measurement. Which brings us to our project goal, which is to build actionable frameworks for impact measurement and science communication to amplify the impact of conservation and climate research, so that the research that these scientists are doing have greater impacts. In order to do this, we performed a multi-stage research methodology, beginning with a literature review, which aggregates our qualitative secondary information to find the best practices for science communication and impact measurement, followed by a comparative analysis of these best practices that we found, as well as case studies in Mississippi, Utah, and California for how they tackle their strategies surrounding our 2 sub-goals. And finally, we conducted several stakeholder interviews to gain a primary understanding of our problem. And we also found some limitations within our topic. The main one and the first one being a lack of universal frameworks for science publications. This is because of a lack of standardized key performance indicators, or KPIs. And this could be due to due to the variation of policy and conservation contexts of TNC's projects. We also found some methodological challenges due to the lack of quantitative tools, requiring qualitative tools to be used as well, which are crucial for these projects, but harder to measure consistently. Also, TNC's global projects make it very regionally varied, requiring our recommended frameworks to be adaptable. And finally, we saw a disconnect in the timeline between the short-term measurement cycles and the long-term timeline to observe conservation results. So going back to our stakeholders, we created a map placing them in 4 quadrants, ranging from their high power in impacting the influence of science, as well as their interest in our 2 key topics. And we got several insights into the crucial understandings of the multifaceted challenges and opportunities that pose for translating science into policy. And we saw common concerns emerge. That is the need for clearer metrics, greater stakeholder engagement, culturally sensitive science communication, and interdisciplinary collaboration, which all told us one thing, that we have to expand the conservation audience beyond those who are already convinced. And these stakeholders suggested solutions supported our literature review to form our final recommended frameworks. So for science communication, we found some best practices that TNC could utilize to improve the way that they reach stakeholders. So we found that scientists don't tend to be formally trained on communication. However, there are abundant external resources available that they can avail of. And that's just a starting point. And so we found some innovative approaches such as boot camps and workshops that they can also utilize. And finally, we looked into some emerging technologies which are changing the pathways of how science is communicated, but we found this to be a long-term solution because of the challenges that they currently pose. And we saw how we have to balance innovation with trust to mitigate misinformation risks. And we spread these across by short-term approaches for our training programs and tailored toolkit, and our long-term approaches of using emerging technologies. That brings us to our next sub-goal, where we also found some best practices. And one of the main things that we found was the requirement for collaboration between MEL specialists, that's monitoring, evaluation, and learning specialists, as you can see at the bottom there. And they essentially track progress and assess effectiveness of such initiatives by nonprofit organizations. And we saw that they should collaborate with the scientists and stakeholders to get the best results. So for our first phase, that's the preparation phase, we suggest an audience-first research design, which essentially the scientists would reach out to key stakeholders from the beginning of the project to craft the research question as well as the design, as well as using clear theories of change. And a theory of change is essentially a conceptual roadmap which aligns the activities and the intended outcomes together. That brings us to our standardization phase, where we would apply relevant impact measurement tools and integrate policymaker input. And lastly, our evaluation phase, which would combine quantitative tools and qualitative tools. Quantitative ones including impact inventories and portfolio analysis, and qualitative ones including policymaker feedback. Once again, these would be spread across short-term approaches and long-term approaches. So to consolidate all of this information and to give you some perspective, we performed a case study on the California Native Plant Society, where they involved regulators and advocacy organizations while creating their database called the Inventory, which is a database for rare or endangered plants. And they did this in collaboration with the US Forest Service, the California state, as well as some nonprofit organizations. And they saw great results in transforming the way that their research product ended up. As you can see, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife now recommends the use of this inventory while following the mandates set by the California Environmental Quality Act when disclosing their rare or endangered plants on a project site. So this is a great example of how a nonprofit organization can collaborate with state agencies to end up with a better research product. And this initiative actually began before the creation of the internet. And so we get to see this long timeline of the project and how it's matured to produce better results. And this finally brings us to our recommended frameworks, which TNC can utilize to strategize their science communication and impact measurement strategies within differing policy and conservation contexts. Beginning with a stakeholder-specific toolkit that our team made, tailored to different types of stakeholder audiences to form engaging narratives resonating across different contexts, as well as skill improvement in the form of language training programs and science advocacy certifications. And lastly, emerging tools as a future solution through AI-powered communication to engage with diverse audiences. And that brings us to impact measurement framework, where we suggest a research design integration to engage policymakers from the earliest research stages, as well as impact alignment for mitigation and adaptation broad metrics by benchmarking to TNC's mission, local and state goals, and ecological scorecards. And finally, forming strategic partnerships to collaborate key stakeholders for MEL implementation. And we finally identified some key takeaways. The first one being that nonprofit organizations like the Nature Conservancy need better measures to communicate and quantify their impact, as well as a lack of standardization within the KPIs. But as you could see, we found a way to standardize the way that the KPIs are formed. We also recommend engaging with stakeholders strategically and making science accessible while building trust. And our recommended framework enables TNC to navigate the evolving impact measurement landscape effectively. Thank you very much. Please let me know if you have any questions. Yes.
We have one up here. Wait till the mic gets.
Thanks. Thanks, Vrinda. Really, really great. I was wondering, you mentioned at some point the use of AI, that it can technically help to make science more accessible to people. Have you in general discussed kind of the pros and cons of, you know, when everybody uses now ChatGPT, whether this in general rather improves or, yeah, makes it worse, the situation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It was a very debated topic within our group for sure. Firstly, because AI is very powerful, but right now within the science landscape, there is too much misinformation risk, as I had mentioned. And that's why this is one of our main challenges. And we suggest for TNC to build these large language models as a future solution to ensure that they're mitigating misinformation risks. So they have to balance innovation and trust. So that's one of the goals that we are suggesting, for them to take it slow and have it as a future suggestion.
Other questions? One over here.
Hi.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. So I recognize that this is with the Nature Conservancy, so obviously focused on kind of environmental science. I wonder whether you feel like this is a problem across all scientific disciplines, or whether there are some that do it better or worse than others. Maybe better, that's a better question. And obviously your findings are somewhat relevant for all of them, but maybe some are more a little further ahead already and you can learn from them and so.
Yeah, for sure. So these best practices that we found are from organizations that might be doing it better, and mostly from educational institutes where they have all of these workshops to improve science communication, and they have a lot of theory on the evolving impact measurement landscape. And so far, just to give you an example, they use something called the H index to see how science publications are doing. Like they send out, they monitor the amount of citations that a paper has, but this is not a comprehensive overview, because you can self-cite, and a lot of publications might be using the same citation and things like that. So yeah, we looked into institutes where they have all of these theories for evolving landscapes. Thank you.
Hi, Vrinda. Wonderful presentation. I think my question builds a little bit to Theo's. Have you identified any specific areas, like subsectors, that are especially challenging for scientists to communicate?
So what we found is that there is just this lack of training when it comes to this, because STEM programs, at least so far, didn't focus so much on the language training of such papers. Like, I'm sure all of us have read so many science papers so far where it's like we don't know what it means, and it's so important to have that ending discussion or results section which contextualizes these papers. So yeah.